All right, picture this for a second. The clock is ticking. You've got exactly 1 minute. The prize, literally as much of a massive fortune as you can physically grab before that timer hits zero. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to break down the adrenaline-pumping world of extreme financial gamification. We're looking at a wild social experiment where ordinary people were handed unthinkable time limits to spend completely unthinkable amounts of money. And we're going to analyze the surprising, hilarious, and, honestly, sometimes emotional strategies they use to maximize their haul.
Now, to really grasp the pressure cooker these contestants were thrown into, we've got to anchor our baseline stakes. The ultimate prize pool sitting on the table, a staggering $1 million in cash. When you introduce a number that massive, well, human behavior kind of shifts. Logic completely flies out the window, and it's replaced by pure, frantic adrenaline. But as we're about to see, the players who actually managed to keep their cool and apply a real strategy walked away with some incredibly life-changing assets.
So here is our roadmap for the Explainer. First, the ultimate spending challenge. Second, strategy, speed versus value. Third, the philanthropic twist. Fourth, sprints, cars, and surprises. And finally, number 5, loopholes and rule bending.
Okay, let's dive right into this first section, the ultimate spending challenge.
The whole foundation of this experiment rests on a very specific set of constraints that we're going to call the spending sprint. The rules are elegantly simple, but trust me, they are incredibly punishing. Contestants are dropped into a location and handed a timer. We're talking anywhere from a blistering 30 seconds to a slightly more generous 5 minutes. Their goal? Grab items. The sponsor will cover the cost of absolutely everything they secure before the buzzer sounds, all the way up to that $1 million cap. These incredibly tight constraints force immediate decision-making, and that is the perfect breeding ground for the wild strategies we're about to dig into.
And that brings us perfectly to our second section, strategy, speed versus value.
The pure math behind the madness here is just fascinating. Let's look at 2 completely different approaches. In an electronics store, one team had 60 seconds. They went all in on a volume grab strategy, literally sweeping loads of gift cards and dozens of games into a cart. All that massive physical exertion got them $18,000. Not bad, right? But then, take Ashley at the jewelry store. She had half the time, just 30 seconds. She totally abandoned the volume idea and focused purely on a high-ticket targeting strategy. By tossing 18-karat gold necklaces and diamond rings into a bowl, she racked up $60,990. If you do the math, that 30-second jewelry run meant she was spending roughly $2,033 every single second.
And it wasn't just the money. The contrast in physical effort is wild. On one hand, you've got total physical exhaustion. This one contestant, Sean, was literally hurtling over store counters, frantically throwing video games and consoles through the air, just trying to beat that 60-second clock. It was maximum effort for way smaller individual payouts. But contrast that against the brilliant simplicity we saw at a John Deere dealership. A contestant known as Chris's dad used what became the one-touch loophole. Because obviously you can't shove a tractor into a shopping cart, the rule was tweaked so he just had to lay a hand on an item to claim it. So instead of sprinting around sweating, he casually just touched an $80,000 piece of heavy farm equipment.
When you look at the financial progression, it completely emphasizes why working smarter, not harder, is the way to go in a spending sprint. The trajectory is super clear. The frantic volume strategy in electronics netted the lowest haul at 18 grand. The targeted jewelry run drastically jumped the payout to nearly 61,000. But the absolute zenith of this whole thing? That John Deere run. By completely ignoring the urge to grab multiple things and just targeting one massive singular asset like a literal tractor conveniently parked by the door, the payout skyrocketed to over $80,000. I mean, it completely broke the game's economy.
Now, just when you think this is purely an exercise in gamified greed, the source material throws us an incredible curveball. Let's explore Section 3, the philanthropic twist.
The producers brought in Jordan. Now, Jordan wasn't playing for herself. She's a teacher, and she was playing for the 91 students on her roster. In an instant, the entire strategy completely transformed. The goal was no longer personal financial gain or finding the most expensive luxury item per square inch. Jordan got a 5-minute sprint inside a supercenter, and her strategy immediately pivoted to pure utility. She went straight for essential classroom supplies. We're talking locked-up laptops, gamer headsets for virtual learning, and even basic necessities like vacuum cleaners for the classroom. It's such a powerful reminder of how human priorities radically alter our behavior, even when you're under crazy game show conditions. Through sheer determination and a really frantic 5 minutes of stuffing multiple carts with snacks, lights, and electronics,
Jordan managed to secure $10,000 worth of supplies for her students. Just an incredible haul. But here's the kicker. The organizers realized that her selfless strategy meant she was actually walking away with nothing for her own family. So right there in the middle of the store, they handed her a surprise, bodyguard-protected briefcase containing an additional 10 grand in cash, meant entirely for her.
So the crucial point here is captured so beautifully in Jordan's reaction. When they handed her that briefcase, she actually broke down in tears. She explained the heavy reality behind the game, saying, "We have so many bills that need to be paid, my son's birthday is Friday, and we weren't going to be able to get him things." Her husband had even agreed to skip his own birthday presents just to keep the family afloat. It just gently highlights the deep, real human impact and the emotional climax of this unexpected philanthropy. This wasn't just a fun YouTube game anymore, it was a literal, life-altering intervention for a really dedicated teacher.
All right, let's ramp the energy back up and see how this builds into some massive physical stakes. Section 4. Sprints, Cars, and Surprises. The creators decided to introduce this fascinating mechanic that I like to call the mystery gamble. A contestant named Brandon got 3 minutes in a custom-built room. But there was a catch. Absolutely everything was wrapped up like a Christmas present. This introduced a massive blind element. He couldn't rely on brand recognition or price tags for a high-ticket targeting strategy. Instead, he was forced to grab items based purely on weight, size, and sheer gut intuition, just lugging heavy, unknown boxes into a designated zone. And you know what? It turned out to be incredibly lucrative. He scored random, high-value rewards like a PS4, a gaming PC, and a massive TV. It just goes to show that sometimes blind luck really does pay off, if you can literally lift heavy enough.
But if we're talking about the ultimate high-stakes physical mechanic, it was definitely the car challenge. This was a brutal 3-step process. A contestant named Mitch had to, first, sprint the length of 2 entire football fields. Then, while heavily winded, he had to figure out how to unlock a high-value vehicle. Finally, he had to get it started and drive it back across the finish line. Oh, and the catch? He had exactly 60 seconds. This is a total all-or-nothing scenario. Missing that time limit by even a fraction of a second meant walking away with absolutely nothing.
The play-by-play on this sprint is just incredible. At 0 seconds, the timer starts. Mitch is burning immense energy, taking 20 full seconds just to sprint across those 2 football fields. By 45 seconds, the panic really sets in. He reaches a $40,000 Tesla, but he can't find a physical key. He has to adapt instantly under extreme pressure, relying on his friend screaming the car's PIN code, 6969, from the sidelines. He manages to punch it into the screen, slams the pedal down, and in exactly 52 seconds, he flies across the finish line. He locked down a massive luxury vehicle with a terrifying 8 seconds to spare. Talk about high-energy, edge-of-your-seat execution.
Finally, we transition into our last analytical lens, which is honestly, easily the most entertaining. Section 5. Loopholes and Rule Bending.
And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute absurdity of human opportunism. The final game took place right inside a friend named Carl's house. The contestant, Matt, was given a limit of exactly 20 touches. Anything he physically touched in the house, he instantly owned. Now, the strategy started out logically enough. He went and touched an expensive Xbox Series X. But as the panic of finding items set in, the strategy just devolved into hilarious rule bending. He literally claimed 2 random doorknobs right off the doors. He touched the actual mattress Carl was sleeping on. And in a moment of pure comedic desperation, when a single Q-tip fell on the floor, Matt touched it. He permanently claimed ownership of a piece of used cotton.
But the sheer brilliance of this final challenge wasn't just the hilarious thievery. It was the economic twist running behind the scenes, the multiplier effect. Every single item Matt touched and claimed didn't actually punish the homeowner, Carl. It rewarded him exponentially. The sponsor had agreed beforehand that for every item stolen, they would buy Carl a replacement that was exactly twice as expensive. It completely and masterfully gamified the total chaotic dismantling of a friend's bedroom. Carl was actively standing there cheering for his own belongings to be touched, knowing his ordinary mattress was about to be upgraded to one double the value. It is the perfect example of how aligning incentives can literally make people celebrate their own robbery.
So we've covered a lot today. We've seen frantic volume grabs, calculated high-ticket targeting, deeply emotional philanthropy, and absurd rule bending just to secure dropped Q-tips. The strategies vary as widely as human psychology itself, so I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on today. Take a look around wherever you are right now. Seriously, look around the room. If that 60-second timer suddenly started ticking, what is your very first move? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep thinking strategically. Catch you next time.